Winters on Thomas's branch line were always very harsh, and no one felt it more than Annie and Clarabel. Unlike most coaches, they were fitted with special gear so that Thomas didn't need to run around them at the top station. His driver would enter a little cab in Clarabel and use special controls connected to Thomas to drive the train back down the branch line. However, when the weather grew cold, their frames would freeze stiff. Every morning, before the first train, the firelighter would get some hot water and would splash over any ice which had formed below the carriages. Percy couldn't see the point. "I'm freezing," he complained one morning. "Why hasn't my fire been lit? Why does the firelighter care about keeping the coaches warm?" "It's for safety reasons, Percy," Thomas would argue. "It's not done for their comfort." But the little green engine wouldn't listen. Early one morning, Percy was feeling restless. He was waiting impatiently in his shed. It was extra cold, and he almost thought the water in his tanks would freeze over. Soon the firelighter arrived. Percy was the only one awake, and this gave him an idea. He coughed as innocently as possible. Excuse me?" he asked in his sweetest voice. "There's been a change of plans. You're to light my fire right away before you do anything else." The firelighter was confused, but was too cold to stand around and argue. Soon, Percy's fire was lit and he was very pleased with himself. The firelighter routinely moved on to Thomas and Toby, and soon all forgot about Annie and Clarabel. It was soon time for the first train, and Thomas went to fetch his coaches. He was surprised to see them both still asleep. "Come along, wake up," he whistled. "Oh, it's dreadfully cold," Clarabel yawned. "Much colder than yesterday," Annie muttered. "Indeed, I do hope our passengers are warm enough." At first, things seemed to be going well, but by the time they got to the junction, Clarabel felt stiff to her frames. "I'm ever so cold. I think something's wrong." "You're always cold," Thomas laughed. "Once we get going, you'll warm up nicely," he reassured her, but she wasn't convinced. All the way to the top station, Clarabel felt stiff, and even Annie started to complain. When they reached the big station, they spoke up again. "Something is definitely wrong," the coaches fumed, "and we aren't moving until it's sorted." There was nothing Thomas could do to convince them otherwise, and so that's what they did. The station master called for a workman who came and checked them over. When he looked under, it didn't take long to find the problem. "Well, bless me! Your undercarriages are like ice rinks," he explained. "You're jammed up with ice." "But how could that happen? The firelighter always makes sure to warm us up," Annie asked in surprise. "I don't know," Thomas scoffed. "But this has Percy's name written all over it," he said crossly. Annie and Clarabel were very cross too, and thought just about what they'd say to Percy when they got back. It took a while for Thomas to calm them down. That night, Thomas, Annie and Clarabel had to stay at the top station while workmen tried to heat the ice. When morning came, the men finally managed to melt the ice, but there was one problem after another. "The points are frozen over," explained the station master. "You won't be able to run around your train, Thomas. You're trapped." "Trapped? But can't I just push the train up the branch with Clarabel in front?" he reasoned. "No, you can't," argued the station master. "The tracks are blocked, and you'll get stuck without your snowplow." "Oh dear, we'll be stuck here all night again," Annie worried. "Never mind us. What about our poor passengers?" called Clarabel. Suddenly, Thomas had an idea. "Please, sir, what if we coupled a snowplow to Clarabel? She could push the snow for me." The station master thought for a moment. "Would you do it?" he asked, turning to the coaches. "I've never heard of such a thing, but it could work." "We at least have to try," they both agreed. And so it was arranged. A small snowplow was attached to Clarabel's front, and slowly but surely, the strange-looking train started up the branch line. The snow was thick, and Clarabel quickly understood Thomas's grievances about snowplows. It was heavy and uncomfortable as it buffeted with snow. It wasn't easy for Thomas either. Unable to see, he had to rely on Annie passing on Clarabel and his driver's instructions now more than ever before. One wrong move could cause his wheels to slip dangerously on the icy rails. It was dark by the time they returned to the station at the end of the line. With one final puff, Thomas, Annie and Clara brought the train into the platform. Percy, Toby and Daisy were waiting for them, and all three cheered. The passengers thanked the engine, coaches and crew for getting them home safely too.
"Well, Thomas, I know you dislike your snowplow, but this is a bit far,"
came a voice. Everyone froze as they saw the Fat Controller walking up the platform. Well, you see, sir, Thomas started, but the Fat Controller held up his hand.
"I've been informed of what's happened,"
he said with a smile, before turning to face the yard.
"After Thomas's accident with the station master's house, you should know better than play around with firelighters. Shouldn't you, Percy?" he said firmly.
Percy gasped and looked down at his buffers. Yes, sir, he said softly.
"Since you want to have your fire lit before everyone else, you can. You will wake up early and clear the branch line of snow. Maybe the call will let you appreciate Annie and Clarabel's position."
Percy could only gulp. The Fat Controller returned his gaze to Thomas and his coaches.
"I think you all deserve a rest. Well done, all of you."
Thomas smiled warily as he took Annie and Carol back to their shed. True to his word, the Fat Controller had Percy clearing the snow all winter before dawn. Percy soon apologized to the coaches, and all three are good friends again. But from that day onwards, whenever someone asked about firelighters, Percy's face went as pale as the snow.
This video is not made for kids. It is for older fans and adults only. So fuck off and enjoy the video.